Dear students, while Mann-Whitney U-test is used to test the equality of two population medians. Now, under the Mann-Whitney U-test, there are certain limitations as far as the sample size is concerned. So, you would have to see that when you are given with the problem, and if you are dealing with the two samples or the two groups, then you would have to see that when your sample size for the first sample, whether it is greater than 20 or N2, that is the sample size for the second group, if that is greater than 20, we cannot use Mann-Whitney U-test. Rather, we would be using the normal approximation for the Mann-Whitney U-test. So I would be giving you the demonstration that what are the assumptions we need to see for a certain problem so that we can follow the large approximation or the normal approximation for the Mann-Whitney U-test. So the distribution of rank sums, it approaches the normal distribution provided our sample size for the first group or the sample size for the second group that is more than 20. The normal approximation was also used when there were ties in the data. So students, अगर आपके पास significant ties आती हैं data sets में across the two samples, while you are comparing the two samples, then you would also be using the normal approximation for Mann-Whitney U-test. But if there are more ties within the sample, then we can ignore those ties. However, there are certain statistical software that provides the solution by including the exact test when there are certain ties in the data set, such as if we are talking about SPSS or Minitab software, they would be taking care of the ties across the sample or even within the samples. Now, the assumptions you need to see into the two groups for applying the normal approximation for the Mann-Whitney U-test are, number one, the sample must be random. If your sample is not random, you cannot follow the normal approximation for the Mann-Whitney U-test. Similarly, the two samples, they have to be independent. If they are dependent on each other, we cannot follow the Mann-Whitney U-test and we cannot apply the normal approximation. And the last assumption is that the dependent variable must be continuous or ordinal. That means we cannot take up the data which is measured on nominal scale so that the normal approximation is to be applied onto the continuous or at least onto the data set which is measured by onto the ordinal scale. Next, I am going to outline the procedure. Once we have checked all the assumptions with the two groups, that whether they are fulfilling all the assumptions to apply the normal approximation of Mann-Whitney U-test, then you are going to follow the procedure. So students, procedure में सबसे पहले आप outline करते हैं pair of hypotheses. Now, once you are given with certain practical problem, you would have to see कि आपको जो compare करने को दिया गया है two medians को, population medians को, are you following them on to the two-tail test or you are following them for the one-tail test? So students, अगर तो वो आप two-tail test से follow कर रहे हैं, तो आपका pair of hypothesis होगा mx equal to my and mx not equal to my. But if your hypothesis is directional, either onto the less than type or of the greater than type, then you would be making use of these pair of hypotheses. Supposingly, अगर आपके alternative hypothesis में more than का relationship है दो medians में, तो आप ये last जो pair of hypothesis है, that you will be using. Then the next step is to outline the level of significance, that is alpha. The test statistic we are going to use is the normal approximation for the Mann-Whitney U-test. So students, यहाँ पे आपको सबसे पहले U calculate करना है, जो कि base करता है आपके rank sum data sets पे. You would have to subtract the expected value of u, which is simply the mean of u divided by the standard deviation of u. So this is the formula you are going to use for applying the large sample approximation. Next, you need to follow the calculation, and under the calculation you need to calculate two values of u, u1 and u2. So under u1 you would have to make use of this formula. Here n1 is the sample size for the first group, r1 is the rank sum of the first sample. So students, as I've told you earlier how to calculate r1, आप सबसे पहले दोनों ग्रुप्स की ऑब्जर्वेशंस को कंबाइन करते हैं, उनको स्मॉलेस्ट टू लार्जेस्ट अरेंजमेंट करते हैं, उनकी एक अरे बनाते हैं जिसमें स्मॉलेस्ट से लार्जेस्ट ऑब्जर्वेशन लिए कलेक्टिवली फॉर द टू ग्रुप्स. उसके बाद आप उसको रैंक्स असाइन करते हैं, स्मॉलेस्ट वैल्यू को मिनिमम रैंक और मैक्सिमम वैल्यू को largest rank आप assign करते हैं. Once you are done with that, you need to separate those two groups और उनके rank sum को आप sum up कर लेते हैं ranks को. एक जो फर्स्ट ग्रुप का रैंक सम है वो आपको देता है R1 और सेकंड ग्रुप का रैंक सम आपको देता है R2. सो यूजिंग R1, R2, N1 and N2 you need to calculate U1, U2. Once you are done with that, you would have to calculate expected value of U and variance of U. And using all these, you are going to calculate the Z. So Z has approximately the standard normal distribution. As you must be aware of the fact that standard normal distribution is that type of distribution for which the mean is 0 and standard deviation is 1. So it would be true when H0 is true, where U is the sum of ranks, N1 is the size of first sample and N2 is the size of the second sample. Now as far as the critical region is concerned, again it is based on to the alternative hypothesis. So for a two-tailed test students, you reject H0 if Z modulus is greater than Z alpha by 2 or your p-value is less than alpha. Whereas for one-tailed test of type mx less than my, you would have to reject H0 if Z is greater than Z alpha. And for one-tailed test of type of greater than type, you would have to reject H0 if Z is less than minus Z alpha. And on the basis of step 4 and 5, finally, you would have to conclude your results whether to reject or accept your null hypothesis on the basis of the evidence you have had.